evening, my name is Paul, and welcome to my first video where I will be reviewing a video game. And so, my first video I decided is going to be on The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing to you The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64. I can't believe that my very first review was of Majora's Mask 3D, and I uploaded that on March 28th, 2016. That means as of the time of this recording, it's exactly 6 years minus 27 days since my first review, and I can't believe that I'm still going and approaching 300 reviews now. Majora's Mask is a very surreal and odd Zelda game. Even though it reuses a lot of Ocarina of Time's assets, including blatantly copying a lot of the characters, enemies, items, etc., it still has a very different feel from Ocarina of Time. Whereas the prequel was more focused on immersing you in this grand adventure to save the world, Majora's Mask isn't so much focused on an overarching narrative as it is trying to make you feel various things. Normally, I'm not a fan of this kind of gameplay. I like stories to be really easy to digest and straightforward. But Majora's Mask has enough great gameplay, and the plot tends to tie into the overarching game mechanic that I can forgive its more surreal nature and just end up loving it as a work of art. So the main premise of Majora's Mask is that the moon is about to destroy the world in 3 days. Now obviously that's not nearly enough time to stop the moon from falling. So Link learns the Song of Time that allows him to reset the cycle so that he can retain a lot of his memories and a lot of the major items he picked up, while at the same time everything else around him restarts. It gives the game kind of a perpetually sad feeling to it, as people that you helped out won't even remember you when you go back in time, and sometimes you'll lose a little bit of disposable items, like bombs and Deku sticks, for example. But thankfully, there are a few things that do carry over between times. For example, your major items that you collect from dungeons will save. Any entries that you get in the Bomber's Notebook, which is much more cryptic than it was in the 3DS version, will still save. And there's a bank in Clocktown that allows you to store your rupees. And I'm guessing that the reason why this is okay is because the bank keeper puts a stamp on Link to remember who he is. So does the stamp have like an icon on it that says this is how many rupees you deposited? Strange logic aside, Majora's Mask seems like a very intimidating game at first, as you constantly have to worry about running out of time. In fact, even the dungeons are on a time limit. If you don't beat the dungeon within that 3-day cycle, then you'll lose all of your progress. You even get a chance to refight a lot of the bosses. Although, in fairness, once you actually defeat a boss, there will be a portal at the beginning of the dungeon that allows you to warp straight to the boss, as opposed to having to go through the dungeon again. Although, if you want to, you can still do that. At least since the major item saves, you don't have to worry about redoing the entire thing, as you can use the major item to take some shortcuts. Majora's Mask doesn't have a whole lot of dungeons compared to most Zelda games, but the dungeons that it does have are some of the highlights of the entire Zelda series. I really don't want to give away a lot, but they usually focus on a central mechanic that you have to constantly pay attention to adjust how the dungeon will behave. And so it rewards a lot of spatial awareness and really takes the concept that Ocarina of Time established of depth and looking around and really takes it to the next level. However, what Majora's Mask lacks in dungeons, it makes up for in its side quests. Majora's Mask has quite a lot of characters to sort through, and you have a whole notebook to keep track of who you've met and what exactly it is that they need. Again, it's much more cryptic than the 3DS version, but it is nice to be able to know the characters' names. And you can actually watch these characters follow their routine throughout the 3 days. You can like follow them around and figure out what their schedule is like when they go to sleep. It's not a perfect system. I feel like Majora's Mask is designed mostly for Link, as opposed to feeling like an organic environment, as sometimes I wonder, where do these people sleep? Where do they get their food? It doesn't feel like an organic, breathing world, but at the same time it feels more immersive than Ocarina of Time, because the passage of time is more accurately reflected in the characters. Like, certain characters will do certain things on the second night that they wouldn't do on the first night, and it feels like they're living a real life, albeit a very short one, because the world is about to end in 3 days. Speaking of the 3 days, it might be a bit off-putting to some people that they have to be on such a strict time limit, and that might discourage you all from wandering around and exploring like you did in Ocarina of Time. There are a few options to offset this. The first is that the Scarecrow in the Observatory teaches you 2 songs, or 2 variations of a song to be precise, that allow you to manipulate the flow of time to a different degree. The Song of Double Time, which is learned by playing each note of the Song of Time twice, lets you skip forward to 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. of the following interval of the day. So if you're on the first day, then you'll skip to the first night. First night, skip to the second day. But it'll always be 6 o'clock, which is a bit annoying if you're used to the 3DS version that allows you to skip to a specific hour. Then there's the inverted Song of Time, where you play the Song of Time backwards, and that either slows down or restores the flow of time, which can be really helpful for certain side quests, as well as getting through the dungeons without feeling rushed, as a lot of the dungeons I got through before the first day could even finish with this new slowed down time limit. Now, in the original Nintendo 64 version, as well as its eventual GameCube, Wii Virtual Console, and Wii U Virtual Console ports, you would get these owl statues that allowed you to save your game. However, these weren't permanent saves. They were more so of if you wanted to take a break from the game, you could do it. Now, you saved the game every time you played the Song of Time, but when you start up your save file again, you start out back in Clocktown. To mitigate this, the Switch version, as well as the Wii U Virtual Console version, if the Wii U eShop is still up by the time you watch this, allows you to save anywhere, which really, really helped. But people that are purists that don't like using the save states might be bothered that saving the game doesn't allow you to save exactly where you were, that you have to start over all the way back in Clocktown every single time. But at least the save option is there, although Majora's Mask's extra horsepower comes at the cost of there only being 2 save files instead of 3, like most Zelda games are. But then again, with the way the Switch is, I don't see too many people wanting to play Majora's Mask at the same time. But then again, you could also manipulate the Switch's save states to get there. Now, Majora's Mask is designed for people that have mastered Ocarina of Time, so it's highly recommended that you play that game first before jumping into this one. However, if you're really determined to play Majora's Mask first, then the story is pretty standalone. There are a few references to the events of Ocarina of Time, but those mostly occur at the beginning of the game, and they don't really impact the narrative all that much because Link is in a parallel world called Termina, so it's removed from Hyrule and the Triforce and Ganondorf, so you can focus on all these new characters. And yes, even if the characters are recycled from Ocarina of Time, pretty much all of them have a totally new identity. So even if they look the same, their mannerisms are usually very, very different. One thing that I complained about in my original Ocarina of Time review was that the combat was too simplistic, and Majora's Mask sort of fixes it and also sort of doesn't at the same time. The combat is still really simple, and more so than Ocarina of Time, you actually don't need to fight a lot of the enemies, you can just walk around them. But to make up for it, Link gets quite a lot of new masks to make up for the lack of new items. There are a handful of masks that transform Link. I don't want to spoil any of them past the Deku mask, because I feel like they come so late in the game that I don't want to ruin the surprises. But they all radically change the way that Link controls, and this contributes to some really, really fun boss battles. Suffice to say that these give you more options for combat and give you different ways of approaching the enemies, which slightly alleviates from the tedium that you would otherwise be feeling. There are other masks to get as well that Link kind of just wears that don't radically transform him, and these masks are a mixed bag. Some of them are insanely helpful, like the bunny hood, which allows Link to run twice as fast, or the blast mask, which allows him to create an explosion without using a bomb or bomb shoe, but at the cost of his health, unless you hold out your shield. That's a little cheat code I learned. Most of the masks are kind of just filler, like some of them are just there as a token that you completed a really long and involved side quest. But if you get all of the masks and perform a certain action at the end of the game, then you'll get a really, really amazing post-game reward. And I personally think that it is worth the grind and possibly looking up a guide to get it. Now, one thing that I really like about Majora's Mask side quests is that they do not feel like a waste of time. Like in Breath of the Wild, sometimes you'd get nothing but 20 rupees for doing a side quest. In Majora's Mask, they really make you feel like you did a really good thing whenever you complete one of these. Just to name one reward, there's one side quest that is really long, but after you complete it, you get the ability to have unlimited magic for the remainder of the 3 days. So you really probably want to go out of your way to complete as many of these as possible, as most of them will give you really good rewards. And again, even if the individual masks that you get don't do much, you will get a really good reward at the end of the game for being a completionist. So with that being said, I really think Majora's Mask is one of the best Zelda games ever made. Granted, it may be very weird and surreal for a lot of you, but it has really good dungeon design. The world feels so much different from Ocarina of Time, and the characters are just wild and wacky. However, it's still a blast to play around with, especially once you get the transformation masks. And it gets you thinking. Granted, it's a very sad game. It's probably not going to make you feel happy and fulfilled like other Zelda games might, but it's definitely going to make you feel a wide variety of things. And hey, it helped me cope with my grandma's death in 2014, so it can help you, even if it's not going to make you have a smile across your face. However, it'll give you a different kind of smile, as it'll make you impressed that this game was technically rushed. It was only given a year of development time. I'll spare you the history lesson, but the fact that the team managed to get this game working in the time that they did is phenomenal. I definitely don't condone game developers for rushing products nowadays, but if they have to do it, then I definitely wish that they would do the Majora's Mask approach. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope that this was a major improvement over my original 2-part review of the 3DS version. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, or critiques, or if I need to clear up anything. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and let's hope I still keep doing reviews for years to come. Bye!